My pregnant wife and best friend betrayed me with a baby, so I uncovered their lies and took everything. My name is Liam, and for a long time, I believed I was living the American dream. Not the flashy kind you see in movies, but the real kind, the kind you build with sweat and hope and unwavering trust. I met Chloe in our early 20s, bright-eyed and full of plans. We started with nothing, a cramped apartment in Cleveland where the pipes rattled and the rent felt like a mountain. We worked. God, how we worked. Me, as a junior engineer at a decent firm, putting in extra hours, chasing promotions. Her, juggling part-time jobs while finishing her degree, her energy a constant source of inspiration. We saved every penny, our shared dream a beacon, a house, a place with a yard, a spare room, a future. 3 years ago, we bought it, a modest two-story colonial on a quiet, tree-lined street. I remember the day we got the keys, the smell of old wood and fresh paint. I remember tracing the patterns in the frosted glass of the front door, thinking we made it. We poured our souls into that house. We spent weekends painting walls, arguing good-naturedly over shades of blue and gray. We planted a garden in the backyard, rose bushes Chloe picked out, a small vegetable patch that was mostly my doing and mostly a failure, but we laughed about it. The sunlight streaming through the kitchen window as we drank coffee on Saturday mornings felt like a benediction. This wasn't just wood and plaster. It was the foundation of our life, a testament to my commitment, my hard work, my belief in us. Chloe was the heart of that home, or so I believed. I saw her as my partner, my anchor. I remember one evening, exhausted after a brutal week at work, I slumped onto the couch, and she came over, didn't say a word, just sat beside me and held my hand. In that simple touch, I felt seen, understood, loved. That's how I saw her. And then there was Mark, my best friend since our freshman year of college. We'd been roommates, survived exams and bad breakups together. He was the best man at my wedding. He was more than a friend. He was the brother I never had. Mark was a constant fixture. At least twice a week, his beat-up Ford would be in our driveway. We'd watch football, tinker with my old project car in the garage, or just sit on the porch drinking beers, talking about everything and nothing. He and Chloe got along like a house on fire. It made me genuinely happy. I'd watch them laughing together in the kitchen while I manned the grill during our frequent summer BBQs, and I'd feel this immense sense of gratitude. My wife, my best friend, my two most important people getting along. It felt perfect. Mark was dating Sarah, had been for nearly 10 years. She was kind, stable, a nurse. She felt like part of the family, too. We all fit together, a comfortable, happy puzzle. The first piece that didn't quite fit came about 2 months ago. Chloe sat me down on that same couch where she'd once offered silent comfort. Her eyes were shining, a smile playing on her lips. She was pregnant. My first reaction was shock. Pure, unadulterated shock. We had a plan. We'd agreed. Wait another year, build up our savings a little more, enjoy being just us for a bit longer. I remember asking her, but how? We were careful. She just laughed, a bright, bubbly sound. It must have been a happy accident, Liam. Maybe the universe knows better than we do. Her happiness was overwhelming, a tidal wave. And I, caught in its current, let myself be swept away. The planner in me, the part that clung to control and order, fought a brief, losing battle against the burgeoning hope of fatherhood. I started looking at cribs online. I picked up books on being a dad. I let the image of a child playing in our backyard take root in my heart. Looking back, her joy seemed almost too bright. Her eagerness to dismiss our plan felt a little off. I remember her quickly ending a phone call once when I walked into the room, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes. Another time, during a dinner with Mark and Sarah, I thought I saw Mark give Chloe a look, a quick, intense glance that seemed out of place. But I brushed it off. I told myself I was being paranoid, letting the shock of the news cloud my judgment. I wanted to believe in the perfect picture. I needed to. The first real tremor, the one I couldn't ignore, came a month later. It was late, past 11. My phone rang, and Sarah's name flashed on the screen. I answered, expecting a question about a recipe or a movie recommendation. Instead, I was met with raw, heart-wrenching sobs. It took me a full minute to understand her. Mark had broken up with her. He'd admitted he'd been cheating. My world tilted. Not for myself, not yet. But for Sarah, for their 10 years, for Mark, who I thought was a better man than that. I felt a surge of anger at him. How could he throw away a decade? I promised Sarah I'd talk to him, that I'd try to fix it. The confrontation with Mark was unlike anything we'd ever experienced. I found him at his apartment, surrounded by half-packed boxes. I laid into him not just about Sarah, but about loyalty, about decency. He didn't meet my eyes. He was defensive, then angry. "It's none of your business, Liam," he snapped. "It's complicated. You have no idea what's going on. 10 years isn't complicated. Mark, it's a life." I shot back. He got right in my face then, his voice rising. "Drop it. Just drop it." We yelled. We said things I never thought we'd say. He stormed out of his own apartment, leaving me standing there, shaking with a mixture of anger and confusion. We didn't speak for a week. Throughout that week, Chloe was my rock. She held me when I raged about Mark's betrayal of Sarah. She soothed me when I felt the loss of my best friend. "He's probably just going through something, Liam," she'd say softly. "Give him his space. He'll come around." Her words were a balm, her touch a comfort. Only now, looking back through the lens of betrayal, do I see the cold, hard calculation behind every comforting whisper, every supportive touch. She wasn't protecting me. She was protecting herself, building a wall around her lies, one soothing word at a time. The perfect picture was beginning to crack, and I, blinded by trust, couldn't yet see the abyss opening beneath my feet. The week of silence between Mark and me stretched into 10 days. Life felt off-kilter, shadowed by the fight and Mark's sudden, inexplicable distance. Chloe continued her role as the supportive wife, her presence a constant, reassuring anchor in the churning waters. Or so it seemed. The abyss I couldn't see was about to swallow me whole. The phone rang again. It was Sarah, but this time, her voice wasn't hysterical. It was cold, chillingly calm. It scared me more than her tears had. "Liam," she said, her tone flat, devoid of emotion. "I need to tell you something. I've been digging." I sat down. "What is it, Sarah?" "Mark's story didn't add up," she continued, her voice like ice chips. "He wouldn't tell me who he cheated with. He said it was a mistake. But I found things. I still had access to his credit card statements online." She paused. There was a charge. A hotel. The Oakwood Inn, over by the airport. "It was from that weekend you were in Chicago for the conference, about 3 months ago." My blood ran cold. I remembered that weekend. Chloe had said she was having a quiet girls' weekend in. "That's not all," Sarah went on, relentless. "I checked his phone records. He tried to delete them, but I found the logs through the carrier's website. Dozens of calls, hundreds of texts, to one number, a number he never saved under a name." She took a breath. I looked up the number, Liam. Silence stretched across the line, heavy, suffocating. I knew, before she even said it. A horrifying certainty settled in my gut like a block of ice. It was Chloe's number, Liam. The air left my lungs. The room began to spin. Sarah kept talking, her voice a distant drone, detailing the calls, the texts, going back at least 6 months. 6 months. A shadow life lived right under my nose. Then she delivered the final blow. "Liam, when exactly is Chloe's due date?" I told her, the date the doctor had given us. Another pause, this one even more dreadful than the last. "Liam," Sarah said, her voice finally cracking just a little. "Based on when I think this started, based on that hotel stay. Liam, there's a very real chance that baby isn't yours." I don't remember hanging up. I found myself standing, the phone clutched in my hand, so tightly my knuckles were white. The world had gone silent, except for the frantic pounding in my chest. I walked, a robot on autopilot, from my home office into the living room. Chloe was there, curled up on our couch, watching some mindless reality show, a serene smile on her face as she rested a hand on her growing belly. Our happy accident. The sight broke something inside me. I stepped in front of the television, blocking her view. She looked up, annoyed at first, then concerned as she saw my face. "Liam, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." My voice came out as a hoarse whisper. "Are you having an affair with Mark?" Her face. I will never forget her face. The color drained away. The serene smile vanished, replaced by a mask of pure panic. And then the tears started. Not a few, but a flood. She didn't even try to deny it. She just sat there, crumbling. It was a mistake, she sobbed. Liam, I'm so sorry. It was a mistake. A mistake. The whisper was gone, replaced by a roar I didn't recognize as my own. 6 months? A hotel? Is that a mistake, Chloe? She flinched, trying to make herself smaller on the couch. I was lonely. You were always working. He was just there. Her excuses felt like acid, searing away the last vestiges of my love, my trust. I worked. I yelled, leaning over her, my hands clenched. I worked to build this. For us. This house, this life. My sweat paid for it. I pointed at the walls, the furniture, the life she was destroying. Then I lowered my voice, the question tearing my throat. Whose baby is it, Chloe? She broke completely, her body racked with sobs. I don't know, she shrieked, burying her face in her hands. I don't know. I hoped it was yours. I wanted it to be yours. That hope, that willingness to lie, to potentially raise another man's child with me, letting me believe it was mine for the rest of our lives. That was the final, unforgivable betrayal. It felt like they hadn't just stabbed me in the back. They had carved out my heart and asked me to admire their handiwork. Something inside me went cold. Numb. Get out, I said, my voice dangerously calm. She looked up, shocked. What? Liam, no. I'm pregnant. I have nowhere to go. You can't mean that. Get out. I turned and started grabbing her things, clothes from the closet, toiletries from the bathroom, throwing them haphazardly into suitcases, into garbage bags. She tried to stop me, grabbing my arms, pleading. I pulled away as if her touch burned me. I placed her house key, the one I'd given her with trembling hands years ago, onto the polished wood table. 1 hour, I said, my voice devoid of any emotion I recognized. If you're not gone in 1 hour, everything you own will be on the front lawn. She stared at me, her eyes wide with a mixture of terror and disbelief. Then, with one last, gut-wrenching sob, she grabbed her purse and stumbled out the door, leaving behind a silence that was deafening. Within hours, the call started. First Chloe, weeping, begging. Then her mother, her voice sharp with accusation. How could you, Liam? Kicking your pregnant wife out onto the street. You're a monster. Then her father, gruff, disappointed. All marriages have problems, son. You need to be a man, forgive her, and take care of your family. They only knew half the story, of course. Chloe had fed them a tale of a terrible fight, painting me as the cruel, unreasonable husband. Their blind judgment, their quickness to condemn me while coddling her, fueled a new kind of anger, a cold, clear resolve. They wanted a villain? Fine, but they were going to know why. I drove to their house. The drive was a blur of red lights and clenched jaws. I walked up the path, ignoring the manicured lawn and cheerful flower beds, symbols of a normalcy that felt obscene. Chloe was there, sitting on the couch between her mother and father, looking pale and victimized. Her father stood up as I entered, his face a mask of disapproval. You've got a lot of nerve showing your face here, Liam. I didn't let him finish. I stood in their pristine living room, a grenade with the pin pulled. You want to know why your daughter isn't in my house? I asked, my voice echoing in the sudden silence. Ask her about Mark. Ask her about my best friend. Ask her about the past 6 months. I looked directly at Chloe, whose face had gone as white as a sheet. And while you're at it, I continued, turning my gaze to her stunned parents. Ask her whose baby she's carrying. Because she told me she doesn't know. She admitted it might be Mark's. The room imploded. Her mother gasped, staring first at me, then at Chloe. Her father sank back onto the couch as if his legs had given out. Chloe launched herself up, screaming, Liar! You're a liar! You're just trying to ruin me! She tried to come at me, her face contorted with rage, but her father, finally understanding, held her back. I looked at her, at the woman I had loved, now a stranger consumed by her own deceit. You ruined your own life, I said, my voice flat. And mine. Then I turned my back on them, on the wreckage, and walked out into the cold, clear air not feeling triumph, only the grim, heavy weight of a truth finally, brutally spoken. Leaving Chloe's parents' house felt like stepping out of a war zone. The immediate aftermath was a deluge. Texts and calls from Chloe, her family, even some mutual friends. Some messages were filled with venom, calling me vindictive, cruel for airing dirty laundry. Others were confused, pleading. I ignored them all, retreating into a shell of numb shock and white-hot anger. The world I knew had dissolved, and I was adrift. It was during this time that I found an anchor, an unexpected one. I called Sarah. I didn't know what I wanted, just needed to talk to the only other person who understood the specific, gut-twisting nature of this betrayal. We met for coffee at a sterile, anonymous cafe, far from our usual haunts. Meeting her was surreal. We were two survivors of the same shipwreck, washed up on a desolate shore. She looked tired, thinner, but there was a new hardness in her eyes. She'd been busy. She laid it all out, printouts of bank statements, phone logs she'd painstakingly recovered, even login details she still had. The affair wasn't just a few sordid trysts. It was an ongoing relationship. They had routines, lunches at a specific Italian place, regular stays at the Oakwood Inn. She'd even found online reservations. Hearing the meticulous, damning details made me physically ill. Sarah wasn't just heartbroken. She was furious. 10 years of her life, invested in a man who was meticulously building another life behind her back. They can't just walk away and pretend this didn't happen, she said, her voice low and intense. They shouldn't be allowed to build a happy life on our ruins. The world needs to know who they really are. In her anger, I found a reflection of my own. It wasn't just about revenge, not a dramatic movie plot kind. It was about justice, about consequences. In that sterile cafe, over lukewarm coffee, we formed an alliance. We worked together, I said, and she nodded, a grim determination on her face. Our first step was legal. I knew I couldn't navigate this alone. Sarah recommended a divorce attorney she'd heard of, a woman named Helen Reed, known for being sharp, strategic, and utterly ruthless. Our first meeting was in her stark, modern office. Sarah came with me, bringing her meticulously organized binder of evidence. Helen listened, her face impassive, occasionally jotting down notes. Ohio is a no-fault state, she explained, her voice crisp. The infidelity itself won't drastically alter the division of assets. However, she paused, looking directly at me. The paternity of a child changes everything. Child support, custody, future financial obligations, it all hinges on that. We need to know, and we need to know now. She filed the divorce papers the next day. Crucially, she also filed a motion to compel a prenatal paternity test. Chloe was served at her mother's house. According to the process server's report, her mother snatched the papers and slammed the door. Hours later, my phone screamed. It was Chloe. Her voice was so loud, so hysterical, I had to hold the phone away from my ear. You monster! You're trying to take my baby away. You'll cause a miscarriage, and it will be your fault. I wish I'd never met you. The old me would have cringed, would have felt guilt. The new me listened, waited for her to pause for breath, and then said, Chloe, have your lawyer contact Helen Reed, and hung up. It felt like clicking a piece of armor into place. A few days later, they showed up. I saw Mark's Ford pull into my driveway through the living room window. Chloe and Mark, together. The sheer audacity sent a jolt of ice through my veins. I opened the door before they even had a chance to knock. They stood on my porch, Mark looking nervous, shifting his weight, Chloe defiant, chin high. Liam, we need to talk, Mark began, his voice weak. This has all gone too far. I cut him off. You are not welcome here, Mark. You need to leave. Now. Chloe pushed past him, jabbing a finger into my chest. This is my house too, Liam. You can't just kick me out and then try to take my child. You're being controlled by that vindictive witch Sarah. She's poisoning your mind. Mark tried to pull her back. Chloe, calm down. You're making things worse. She spun on him, her rage now directed at her partner in crime. Don't you tell me what to do. You need to be a man and stand up to him. You promised. It was a pathetic, horrifying spectacle. The two of them, unraveling right there on my doorstep. He was telling her she was hysterical. She was crying that he wasn't supporting her. I'd had enough. "Get off my property," I roared, my voice booming over their squabble. "You have 5 seconds before I call the police for trespassing." That shut them up. Chloe shot me a look of pure, unadulterated hatred. Mark just looked defeated. He took her arm and led her back to the car. As they drove away, I could see them still arguing. I went inside and changed all the locks. My lawyer had advised me to freeze our joint savings, leaving only enough in checking for immediate bills. I was taking back control, piece by piece. The court battle over the paternity test was ugly. Chloe's lawyer argued harassment, medical risk. Helen Reed presented Sarah's evidence, coolly, factually. She argued that uncertainty was a form of ongoing harm, and that clarity was essential for any fair resolution. The judge, faced with a binder full of hotel receipts and text logs, reluctantly granted our motion, citing special circumstances created by the deception. The day Chloe had to go for the amniocentesis was hell. Her mother left me a voicemail, sobbing, calling me a heartless creature putting my selfish need for revenge above an unborn child. I deleted it. I didn't feel good about the procedure, but the uncertainty was a poison, and I needed it out. 2 weeks later, Helen called. "Liam, can you come in?" "Sarah, too, if she's available." We sat in that same conference room. Helen slid a single sheet of paper across the polished table. I didn't need to read it all. My eyes snagged on the crucial line, the scientific, impersonal words that sealed my fate and theirs. The alleged father, Liam Carter, is excluded as the biological father of the fetus. I stared at the paper. There was no relief, no joy, just a vast, echoing emptiness. The lie was dead. Confirmed. Sarah reached across the table and put her hand on my arm. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. It wasn't a victory. It was the official death certificate of my marriage, my friendship, my imagined future. That evening, feeling a strange mix of numb resolve and lingering pain, I decided it was time. I started packing Chloe's belongings, not throwing them as I had in my initial rage, but carefully, methodically boxing them up. It was a painful, cathartic act, each item a ghost of a shared memory. Tucked away in the back of her closet, under a pile of old sweaters, I found a shoebox. Not shoes. It was filled with old letters, photos, and a slim, leather-bound journal. My hands trembled as I opened it. It dated back 5 years, before we were married. There were entries describing doubts about us. There were entries detailing a deep connection with Mark, how he understood her in a way I didn't. There were hints of flirtations, crossed lines, even a mention of an almost kiss months before our wedding. And then, chillingly, emails printed out between her and Mark from just after we bought the house. Fantasies about their future, jokes at my expense, Mark complaining about Sarah, Chloe complaining about my long hours. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't loneliness. It was a long, slow, calculated betrayal. It was contempt dressed up as love. Any lingering shred of pity or doubt I might have felt vanished. It was replaced by a cold, hard certainty. They deserved what was coming. The discovery of Chloe's journal and the emails was the final push. It wasn't just about an affair anymore. It was about years of deception, of living a lie while I poured my life into building a future she was already planning to share with someone else. The cold fury solidified into something else, a need for absolute, undeniable accountability. Sarah, meanwhile, was meticulously going through Mark's finances for her own legal battle. She'd invested significantly in the house they'd shared, which was solely in his name. She called me one evening, her voice tight. "Liam, you need to see this." She found it. Discrepancies in Mark's expense reports for work. Dinners with clients at expensive restaurants on the same dates as the Oakwood and Stays. Restaurants nowhere near any actual client offices. Charges for mileage on the company car that clearly mapped to trips across town, not business travel. It was brazen fraud hidden in plain sight. We sat in my living room, the room where I confronted Chloe, surrounded by boxes filled with the ghosts of my marriage. We looked at the evidence. We debated. Was this going too far? Was it purely revenge? Then I thought about Mark, standing on my porch, weakly asking me to talk after sleeping with my wife. I thought about Chloe's screams, blaming me, blaming Sarah, blaming everyone but themselves. I thought about the journal, the years of contempt. No, I said, my voice firm. This isn't just revenge. He used company resources to facilitate his affair. He stole from his company and indirectly from everyone who works there. This is about consequences. Sarah nodded, her eyes glinting. He asked you for money, didn't he? After all this, that sealed it. We used the company's anonymous whistleblower portal. We uploaded scanned copies of the receipts, the expense reports cross-referenced with the hotel dates, the mileage logs. We didn't mention the affair. We didn't mention our names. We just presented the cold, hard facts, potential expense, and asset fraud. We sent it off into the digital ether and waited. We didn't have to wait long. Within a week, a ripple went through the office grapevine. Mark had been suspended pending an internal investigation. Our company, facing a tough economic climate and already cracking down on expenses, took it seriously. A week after that, the news broke. Mark Jensen was fired, terminated for gross misconduct and misuse of company property. The moment I heard it, I felt a surge of something dark and undeniable. It wasn't happiness, not exactly. It was a grim, chilling satisfaction, a sense of balance, violently, brutally restored. He had lost his job, his career at the firm we'd both started at as hopeful young engineers. It was over. I called Sarah. She was quiet for a moment. Then, she simply said good. The consequences were immediate. That night, I woke to a sound outside. In the morning, I found all 4 tires on my car slashed. There was no note, no proof, but I knew. It was a petty, desperate act of rage from someone who had lost everything and had nothing left but spite. I filed a police report, knowing it would likely go nowhere, and I installed high-definition security cameras around the entire house. This was my new reality, a life lived with an eye over my shoulder, a sad, necessary precaution. The divorce, thankfully, became much simpler. With Mark fired and facing financial ruin, their ability to fight dwindled. Chloe's lawyer, likely seeing the writing on the wall and probably not getting paid, became remarkably agreeable. They accepted the second, court-appointed appraisal of the house. I had to take out a new mortgage, a painful financial hit, but I managed to buy her out. The house, my house, was finally legally mine alone. Chloe's father came one afternoon while I was at work and picked up her boxes. He left a short, handwritten note on the kitchen counter. It simply said, "Liam, I am so sorry for everything. You deserved better." I never heard from her mother again. Mark's life imploded. Fired for misconduct, blacklisted in our industry, and facing Sarah's successful lawsuit ordering him to repay her significant investment, he was financially destroyed. Chloe gave birth to a baby boy about 2 months ago. A former mutual friend, one of the few who tried to stay neutral, sent me a text with a picture. I looked at it for a second, an innocent face, blissfully unaware of the chaos surrounding its arrival, and then I deleted it. His existence is a fact, but it has nothing to do with me. I heard through the grapevine that Chloe and Mark are living in a cramped, low-rent apartment across town. He's doing odd jobs, manual labor for cash. She's on leave, but her part-time job isn't guaranteed. They got each other, the prize they coveted so deeply, but they lost everything else in the process. And me? And Sarah? Our alliance, forged in fire and fury, slowly, tentatively, became something else. We understood each other's scars because we'd inflicted similar wounds on our betrayers. But more importantly, we understood each other's pain. We started spending time together that wasn't about lawyers or strategy sessions. We went for walks. We cooked dinner. We talked, really talked, about trust, about healing, about what a future could even look like. We live together now, in my house. It's strange, sometimes, building something new on the foundations of something so painfully destroyed. There are days when a shadow passes, a memory ghosts through a room. But Sarah understands. She doesn't flinch from the darkness. She acknowledges it, and then helps me find the light. It isn't a fairy tale romance. It's something quieter, stronger, built on the hard-won ground of shared truth. They say truth sets you free, but first, it can burn your world to the ground. I stand in the ashes, but for the first time in a long time, I see a clear sky. I am no longer the trusting, naive man I once was. I am warier, perhaps a little harder, but I'm also stronger. I understand boundaries. I understand my own worth. And I wonder, as I look out at the yard I once planted with false hopes, how many of us are living in houses built on sand, afraid to test the foundations? I tested mine, and though it collapsed, I'm rebuilding. This time on solid rock.